Bonjour tout le monde, c'est moi Charlotte. Aujourd'hui nous allons regarder plusieurs phrases avec le pronom personnel nous, et puis on va regarder les mêmes phrases avec le pronom personnel on. Et en fait les deux veulent dire la même chose. Ok, on y va? Allons-y. Hello everyone, my name's Charlotte and today we're going to look at the French personal pronouns or subject pronouns nous et on in the instances where they mean the same thing. Nous is what you may have heard as the subject pronoun that means we. Nous allons à Paris, we're going to Paris, for example. Nous parlons le français. Nous ne parlons pas beaucoup de français, peut-être. So, nous in all of those sentences means we. We speak, we're going, etc. But in informal French, and very, very commonly, you will hear a different pronoun. On. On y va. On est là. On va au supermarché, par exemple. So you will hear on instead of nous, but actually it means the same thing. So that isn't in every instance where you see the pronoun on. On can also mean one. So when you're speaking impersonally, for example, if you say, in France, they speak French. In English, you can say that in three ways. In France, they speak French. In France, one speaks French. Or you could even say, in France, you speak French, you speak. But all of those instances in English, they're impersonal. They're not necessarily speaking about you, or they as in those people over there, or one, as in one person. They are just the equivalent ways of saying or creating impersonal structures and sentences and phrases in English. In French you would hear on. So there's two main uses for on, but here we're looking at, rather than the indefinite pronoun, which incidentally could be replaced by quelqu'un, like for example, oh, on a frappé à la porte. Ah, someone, quelqu'un a frappé à la porte. Someone knocked at the door. You could say that in French, on a frappé à la porte. On, in that instance, means someone. Someone has knocked at the door. But that would be an indefinite pronoun. So instead in this video, we're looking at on when it refers to we, as in a group of people, two or more, for which the speaker is part of the group. Okay, so if you say, oh, on a frappé à la porte, the person who's speaking, moi, par exemple, I'm not part of the group that I'm describing. On a frappé à la porte is impersonal. Someone has knocked at the door. So we're not looking at that meaning. We're looking at on when it's used to mean nous. Alright, so we're going to change. I have 20 sentences here. We'll see how much time we have. They'll be changed on my board from the nous form to the on form. Okay, so the equivalent will also mean we, but it's what you will hear spoken most often, but sometimes in like emails between people who know each other. So it's kind of casual, informal talk as opposed to formal, higher register kind of stuff. But listen out for it, because you'll hear it in films, you'll see it on like social media where people are quite happy to write informally, if you like. You'll hear it spoken like with your French friends, French speaking friends. So it's very, very useful. Now, on is conjugated in the third person singular. So it's the conjugations of verbs using the on form are in the third person singular. So here I've got four common verbs. I've got the nous form up here. Okay, nous sommes, we are. So you've got the pronoun nous, and then you've got the verb être in the nous form. Nous sommes, we are. Nous sommes français. Nous sommes françaises, if you're a group of girls. Nous avons, we have, or we have got, we've got. Nous allons, this way. We are going, or we go. And then we've got a common ER verb at the bottom. Nous parlons. Nous parlons le français, par exemple. We speak, or we're speaking French. So here we've got the same little conjugations, but in the third person singular, which are the same as il and elle forms of the present tense verb, okay? So il, elle, and on, you'll find them on the same line in verb conjugation books. So you use the third person singular version of the verb, conjugation of the verb that you're using, instead of, with the pronoun on, instead of the first person plural with the pronoun nous. So they're the same. Don't worry if you can't master these, but at least be aware of the fact that it is used as an alternative to nous. Okay, so we have on est, that means we are, okay, like nous sommes. On a, excusez-moi, which is from the verb avoir. Get rid of the... Can you see that? That's annoying, isn't it? Maybe I could put it down here and sort of... Oh no, c'est trop difficile. So on est is like nous sommes. On a is like nous avons. On va is like nous allons. And on parle is like nous parlons. On va au cinéma is essentially the same as nous allons au cinéma, but it's using the, the informal on version, which means that you need a different personal pronoun, a different conjugation of the verb, and maybe other elements of the sentence that you say or questions that you ask will differ. So let's have a look. On y va, I said, let's go. Okay, which is quite a common way of saying allons-y, let's go. So here I've got, you might see my head sort of cut off and hear a few sounds, but I'm doing my best here to try and get all of the information on here visible. Doesn't really matter if you can't see me, as long as you can hear me. And I am aware of like a little ee in the background, but I'm constantly trying to get rid of that. So let's have a look what we have. So here we have, I've started off with être because it's one of the auxiliary verbs in French. So you need to know the present tense of être. Je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est, nous sommes. Comme ça, par exemple, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils and elles sont. Pardon. So this is the auxiliary verb être, and in the en form, we'll change the subject pronoun and the verb, okay? And it will look. Il faut utiliser le stylo bleu, en fait, like my top. So nous sommes becomes on est, okay? Like the little thing I just held up. On est là, okay? That means we are. So it's from the verb être, is the third person singular. On est là. We're here we are. So even though you might have heard là, meaning there, as opposed to ici, often you'll hear là, on est là, like here we are. So, if you're calling a register in the school, je suis là. I'm there, if you like. In English we'd say, I'm here, here-ness. Okay, so là, it just means here in that instance. On est. Right, now this is where I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you can see this. So again we have nous sommes français, and then we've got an E and an S at the end, because that's the feminine ending. If you'd replace the S, oh no, you'd add, instead of just having an S at the end, if it's a bunch of chaps, we, us guys, we are French, you would add ES to the written form if you were writing it to be correct, okay? Because adjectives in French agree in gender and number with the subject, and here we have the plural subject, nous, that's plural, it's more than one person, plural. But the gender, it has to agree in gender, with the gender of the subject. So if there's a girl in that group, no, if it is a group of girls, then the ending will have an es. Français becomes française, okay? When you hear, for example, crème anglaise, and there's that z sound at the end, it's not crème anglais, because it's la crème, okay? So crème anglaise is what a British person would call custard. But if you were going to call it by its French name, to be understood and to be correct, it would be crème anglaise, because there's an E after the S in anglais. Anglais becomes anglaise, and it's the same with français, which becomes française. So, nous sommes français, française. That's the verb être, and just like above, we change nous to on, and sommes to est. On est français, on est française. Now, when you're saying that, you can't hear whether there's an extra S at the end of français. You don't know whether it agrees in number with the plural subject. You might think that because it's a singular on, singular subject pronoun, that the ending of the adjective is singular. That would make sense because it agrees with on being a singular pronoun, et being a singular conjugation of a verb, but actually this is not necessarily as you'd imagine. So when you're using on to mean we, even though the verb still is conjugated in the third person singular, the ending of adjectives describing words like this agrees with the whoever the subject is. So that's a bit unusual. That also occurs in, for example, on est parti, on est allé. The past participle, aller, for example, on est allé. If it was we went, but it was a group of girls, there'd be an extra E and an S to agree with the girls and the plural. That's maybe something we should look at in a separate video altogether, but it's just why adjectives will agree and past participles in past tenses will agree with the gender and the number of the group, okay, the subject, even though on and est is singular. Oh, it's quite hard, isn't it? Anyway, we don't see too many of those. Mostly this is just changing the subject pronoun and the verb conjugation that follows. So here we have numéro 3, nous. Let's see if I can just get myself in on that. Can I come over here? Yes, I can. Hopefully you can hear me. Isn't my mic over that way? So, nous avons assez de temps. Nous avons assez de temps. We have, or we've got, enough time. Assez de, enough of something. We have enough time. Oui, nous avons assez de temps. So here we're going to change nous to on. That's going to be the same throughout. Avant, in the new form, changes to the third person singular. On a assez de temps. On a assez de temps, oui, on a assez de temps. Ok, calme, tranquille, on a assez de temps. Tranquille, nous avons assez de temps. C'est la même chose, okay? Okay, so here we've got avoir in the negative. Oh, what happens here? It's not that hard, okay? It's not that hard. So, nous changes to on. Okay, this is negative, so we need an N-A, that's the N bit, and then we need a pas, the other side of the verb. The reason it's just N apostrophe instead of N-E is because the verb conjugation starts with a vowel, okay? So we've got on n'a pas d'enfant. On n'a pas d'enfant. So the new form here would be nous n'avons pas d'enfant. We have no children. Or we have no child, if you like. The French has got the singular there, although sometimes people put an S on the end. But because you have none of something, the something of which you have none is in the singular. Okay? Nous n'avons pas d'enfant becomes on n'a pas d'enfant. Okay, so normally there'll be a ne and a pas around the verb if you're making it negative. So instead of we have, nous avons, it's nous n'avons pas. And instead of on a, like above here, on n'a pas de something. On n'a pas d'enfant. So it's d apostrophe enfant instead of de enfant, because the preposition de is a bit like this little part of the negative ne. When it's followed by a word that starts with a vowel, like enfant, qui commence avec e, it just is like truncated down. Not sure if that's the right word. Truncated? No, not truncated. What do you call it? Abbreviated? Might be that word. There's another word as well. When you contracted. Voilà. You contract de enfant down to d'enfant and ne a to na. There's quite a lot of information just in these 1, 2, 3, 4 exemples. Okay, so allons-y. You might not hear that often. It means let's go there. This is like an imperative form. But we've got a kind of an equivalent here. I'll write the whole thing out. On y va. So va, like in ça va. How's it going? Oui, ça va bien. Ça va mal. Ça va pas mal. Ça va très bien, etc. So that's the same third person conjugation in the singular. On y va. So that changes a little bit. You keep the pronoun, you put the e before the verb aller. Bit different there, but they both mean let's go. Let's go. Ok, on y va. Let's go then. Numéro 6, nous mangeons du pain. Nous mangeons du pain. Let's see if I can space into here to get down. Oui. On descend comme ça. You might hear in a lot of my videos that I actually use the on form without thinking instead of the nous form, because I'm addressing my students, my subscribers. So it's a kind of, it's a bit more casual, you know, rather than sort of formal. Nous mangeons du pain. Here we have we eat, or we're eating bread. That changes to on, and then mangeons changes to mange, which is the same as il mange, elle mange. It's also written the same as the je form, je mange du pain. I'm eating some bread. The du in front of pain means some. Okay, in English we just say bread. But you can also say some bread, which is a bit more similar to the du. Other things you might hear, de la, or de, je bois de l'eau, for example, de plus L apostrophe eau. Je mange des frites, du, followed by masculine singular noun, de la, followed by, like, je mange de la crème anglaise. It's not something I like really, but it's la crème anglaise. It's feminine, it's singular. D-E space L apostrophe for something that's singular that starts with a vowel, and then de for something that's D-E-S for something that's plural. Des frites, par exemple. Des sandwiches, des pizzas, whatever. So nous changes to on, mangeons changes to mange. Now what you should notice is that all of the conjugations of verbs, verb conjugations for the nous form end in ONS, ONS. Oh, pardon. Il y a une exception là. So there's an exception actually with some, nous sommes, but mostly they end with ONS, which is a way that you can recognize them as being the nous form, but also a way that you can sort of guess at verbs. So if you know the verb aller, you can guess that nous allons means we are going. Or if you know, I don't know, dormir is to sleep, and you take off the IR at the end, you add ONS and put it together with the stem of dormir, dormons, nous dormons. Okay, qu'est-ce que vous faites? Nous dormons. What are you doing? We're sleeping. You probably wouldn't answer a question with that because you'd be asleep, but the ONS ending tells you that a verb, if you know it's a verb and it's got ONS in it, it's a new verb, okay? It means we. But here we're changing the new verbs to the on form. So it can be a bit complicated with verbs like faire, to make or to do. So we're doing in this instance. On fait. F-A-I-T. F-A-I-T. On fait du travail. So the ending of that, if you've got my handout, club handout for this month, looks a bit like this. Voilà. Il y a aussi des réponses. On my sheet, there's all the answers. But on yours, club members, you won't get them unless you especially ask me for them. But if you watch this video, of course, you get all the answers. So, on fait du travail chez Sylvie. We are doing some work chez Sylvie. That means at Sylvie's place. Could be her home, it could be her like cafe, but normally it means at her place, at her house, you know. Du travail, again we've got the word travail, which is le travail, like le pain, both masculine singular words. So if you're doing some work, it would be du travail, okay? Ok, nous venons de Toulouse. Nous venons. So venons is the verb venir. That means we come from. So venir is to come. Maybe if I just come over here, I can put that way. Voilà, je suis là. Je suis là. You see, I'm here. Here I am. So nous becomes on, and instead of venons, this is an irregular verb venir. On vient. Vient. On vient de Toulouse. Yeah, we come from Toulouse. Right then, let's see if I can bring this little, bring my tripod down a little bit there for this. I have to move my mic up. Voila, this is my phone. Don't detach the cable, please. So, we've got nous allons bien. That's a short little sentence, isn't it? Nous allons bien. That's a bit like ça va bien. Right? So we are going well. Literally, we are going well. We're all right, we're fine. So change nous to on. Allons becomes va. Il, elle, on va. Bien, that stays the same. We are fine. On va bien, oui, ça va bien, on va bien, nous allons bien, oui, ça va. So this one here, we've got a slightly different verb here. Nous sortons ce soir. Sortons comes from the verb sortir, which means to go out and party, go out for the evening, just to literally go out of somewhere, but more to kind of go out. You might use partir to leave, like to go out of somewhere, but here we've got sortons. Think of it as like going out, okay? If you watch Mickey Flanagan, very funny, British comedian there. Nous sortons ce soir changes to on sort ce soir. On sort ce soir? Oui, on sort ce soir. Should we go out this evening? Yes, let's go out. So, on the next page, we should have numéro 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 11 jusqu'à 20. We should have 11 to 20 of those examples, and they should match up with your handout, all my club members. Okay, voilà, ça y est, oui, voilà. That's it right there. So, let's have a look at what verbs we have. Hopefully you're getting used to this now. So, the main thing is identify the subject pronoun nous. It becomes on. Change the verb. Habitons. Nous habitons près des Champs-Élysées. Nous habitons près des Champs-Élysées. It's a bit show-offy, isn't it? We live near to the Champs-Élysées. Oh, la-di-da. On habite. Take the verb down to the stem, add an E with ER verbs, okay? Regular ER verbs. There are examples like aller, which is just irregular. It doesn't follow the normal ER conjugation. So irregular verbs are just the verbs that don't follow the normal pattern, okay? There's quite a lot of them, but ER verbs tend to be regular, okay? There are always exceptions. On habite près des Champs-Élysées. We live near the Champs-Élysées. So that's something that you might say with a bunch of mates you haven't seen for a while. For example, you're telling them where you now live, where you've moved to. So instead of saying nous habitons près de, you might say on habite. Okay, all casual. Here we've got nous sommes mariés. So here's an example of when you have an adjective describing someone's status or state or physical state. It's a description word, an adjective, and they agree with the gender and number of the people speaking, the subject, or the people about whom the sentence is or the sentence describes. So here, nous sommes mariés could either have an S at the end like that, or it could have an extra E, which would mean it's talking about, you know, we us girls, we're married girls, you know, we're not single. So nous sommes becomes on est marié. Now it might be marié without the extra E, or it might have an S, but remember we're using on est to mean we are. So this is the one of the instances where something that follows the on est structure actually is plural, because it's talking about plural subjects. Oh, it's confusing, isn't it? So that's what happens when you're using on instead of nous. If you're using on, par contre, contrastingly, to refer to people in general, on est bien, on parle français. Well, I can't think of any examples. On est marié, ça marche pas en fait. Other instances of when an adjective may appear, or a past participle, or something else that changes. If it's not on being used as a personal pronoun to mean nous, and if it doesn't include the person who's speaking in that nous group, then adjectives and past participles, etc., will not agree with the plural. They'll just agree with the gender of the person who's speaking, if at all. Okay, that's something we need to look at, maybe in the next video. Maybe the next video, that's what we'll look at, because it would be a natural continuation. So here again we have étudiant, plural. Étudiante with an ES at the end because it's feminine. There are the two options. You have to have either the S or the ES, bunch of chaps, or a mixed bunch with a chap in it, bunch of ladies there. That nous sommes changes to on est. Okay, on est étudiant, we are students, and those plural endings of the adjectives remain in this instance because on est basically means nous sommes. Okay. Okay, that's probably something that's going to be a bit confusing, but hopefully not. Let me know in the comments or send me a message or an email or something if you've got queries about that. Let's look at the remaining 6. So we have savons. We've got 2 sets of conjugations here in the new form to change. Savons-nous, a verb subject inversion, or a subject verb inversion. That should tell you this is probably a question that's coming, okay? And there's also un point d'interrogation à la fin. So there's a question mark right there, another clue in the written form. But when you hear this in a spoken form, savons-nous, êtes-vous, es-tu, etc. You can do it with any subject pronoun. That tells you it's a question. Savon comes from savoir. Attention, savon, le savon also means soap. But that's a noun and it doesn't have an S at the end. Here we've got the verb with an S, ONS, and then followed by a hyphen and a nous. That means do we know where we are going? Know we where we are going? So we change this one here, we'll probably say c'est on, c'est il sait, elle sait, on sait. C'est ton. We have a liaison here where you pronounce the T because it's followed by a vowel, une voyelle, O-N. C'est ton ou nous allons. Okay, what does nous allons become, guys? Nous becomes on. Allons becomes va. C'est ton ou on va. C'est ton où on va ce soir? Do we know where we're going this evening? Nous allons Okay, we've just changed nous allons, so this should be quite simple. On va. This isn't answering the question from above, by the way. On va souvent en train. Or nous allons souvent en train becomes on va souvent en train. We often go by train. Yes, we take the train a lot. Okay? So you can use the verb aller when you're talking about going by train. Just like in English, I guess, but you can also use prendre. On prend le train. But you know, using aller with a form of transport is, perfectly acceptable. And a good way to practice the verb aller because it is irregular. Je vais, tu vas, il, elle, on va, nous allons, vous allez, ils, elles vont. Il, elles vont. You don't pronounce the S at the end of il, elle, the they subject pronouns, unless it's followed by a verb that it starts with a vowel. Okay, I like to get the verb préférer, to prefer, in here. I think we might be missing a little accent aigu là. Préférons. Nous préférons. We prefer. What do we prefer to do? Nous préférons jouer au foot. Okay, we prefer playing football. Que nous préférons jouer au foot que jouer au tennis. We rather playing football, or we rather play football than play tennis. We prefer playing football than playing tennis. So what we change here is nous becomes on, and préférons in the nous form becomes préfère. Attention. Sometimes, depending on the conjugation, with verbs like this, for example, where there's some accents over the E's, those accents can change direction and therefore change the pronunciation a little bit, but don't worry too much. Là, par exemple, on a préfère. Pré, et, préfère. So, et and air. You get used to that, and sometimes it's confusing, and if you don't know, just go and check. Go on word reference on the conjugations tab, put in the verb préférer, and you'll see all the different changes in the accents, okay? You can even listen to how they sound as well. You could do that on Google Translate, I think, as well, if you type in, copy and paste in some text and press the play audio. On préfère jouer au foot que jouer au tennis. D'accord? Okay. Now this one here, what have we got that's interesting about that one? We have, oh, I saw it go blurry when it went up and down then. We have a modal verb, pouvoir. Pouvoir. Very irregular when you, and it ends with an IR, but it doesn't really follow the je peux, tu peux, il, elle, on peut, nous pouvons, vous pouvez, ils peuvent. You think, is that irregular? Well, anyway, it's a modal verb. So, pouvons-nous, that means can we, in the present tense. Can we, oh, what's this nous asseoir? What's that all about? So here we have a reflexive verb. May we sit down? So what happens when you've got a modal verb? You can follow it by an infinitive, like pouvons-nous manger des frites? Can we eat some chips? Pouvons-nous boire de l'eau? Can we drink some water? Pouvons-nous payer maintenant? Can we pay now? But here, instead of having payer, manger, boire, etc., which are just regular verbs in the infinitive form following pouvons-nous, we have s'asseoir. Right, so in its full form, where can I write this? In its full form, that would look, because it's an infinitive, normally you'd follow a conjugated modal verb like pouvoir, devoir, what's that one? Vouloir, or even savoir, like honorary modal verb. You'd follow it with an infinitive verb, but here we've got a reflexive verb, which means to sit down, to sit oneself, if you like, oneself down. So the reflexive oneself bit is here in the infinitive. But if you were using the on form, you would say peut-on s'asseoir ici? In fact, I'll write that down here now. Peut-on you've got peut, il, elle, on peut, hyphen on, which means you have to make a liaison, like sait-on, peut-on, can one, can we, basically. So it would be s'asseoir. Can one sit down here? If we were using the third person form, peut-il s'asseoir, peut-on s'asseoir, peut-elle s'asseoir, then that would be written like that, the infinitive form that you'll find in a dictionary when you look up to sit down, s'asseoir. But here something different happens. So we have pouvons-nous nous asseoir. So you use the nous reflexive pronoun, or the reflexive pronoun for nous. Here it's the third person reflexive pronoun for on. Ooh, that's actually quite confusing. Mais voilà. So you've got a modal verb there, you've got a question, so you've got subject, verb, inversion, and then you've got an infinitive verb. Wow, that's loads of stuff. I'd say that's pretty intermediate to higher level kind of stuff. Definitely intermediate if nothing else. So here, I'm going to show you an example of which is a bit different, okay? So this can mean, in France we speak French. You'd probably hear, en France, on parle français. If the speaker's part of the group, the speaker could either use on parle français, or you could hear, en France, nous parlons français. Okay? But if you were not included in the group and you're just talking about France from a distance, okay? Maybe you don't even speak French, but you're making a statement. Oh, in France they speak French. In English you might say they speak French. But you can also say correctly, en France on parle français. En France on mange des escargots. In France they eat frogs. En France on boit du vin. In France they drink wine. So if you're using this impersonal form, you would use on plus a verb. So, confusingly, you can either say on parle français en France and mean it as in they speak, one speaks. You know, it's just a statement about them, not including yourself as the speaker. Or if you're a French person or a French speaker and you want to include yourself in the group, you can either use either of these options that we're about to see. Okay, voila. So I think definitely I'm going to have to do my next or a video soon on using on impersonally. So ici en France, here in France, that tells you that the person speaking in French includes themselves in the group actually. Nous parlons le français. But you can say on parle. On parle. Okay, voila. Gosh, it's a long video. Let's have a look at this one, which is both a modal verb and also... Oh, attention! Qu'est-ce que je fais là? Qu'est-ce que je fais là? So, I'll move this back, and instead of using the my desk, which I just love using, I'm just going to use my good old-fashioned tripod. Okay, so here we not only have the modal verb devoir, to have to or must, we also have the conditional tense, present conditional. Should, it can mean must, but here it means should we, devrions-nous rester dehors? I thought this was kind of topical, seeing as social distancing measures seem to be coming in a little bit more. Again, devrions-nous rester dehors? Should we stay outside? So devrions-nous can be devrait, that's the he, she, one, third person, singular, present conditional conjugation. So this is the present conditional. Devrait, devrait-on, devrait-on, that's like peut-on, sait-on, okay. In fact, devrions-nous, I feel like that should have a little hyphen there. Yeah, it should. Why should it do that? Because it's a question. We have an inversion of the nous And so it's a question, basically. Look at the end. Regardez la fin de la phrase. Il y a un point d'interrogation là. Donc là, oui. It's obvious now. So, devrions-nous rester dehors becomes devrait-on. If that was in the present tense, without the conditional part, it would be devons-nous. So devons-nous, must we? Do we have to? Becomes devrions-nous, should we? Devrait-on is the conditional, but if it was, so that means like, should we? But if it was the present tense of the same verb, devoir, it would be doit-on. Doit-on. So devoir, which looks like this, is a very useful verb to look up and know, along with pouvoir, to be able to, can, if you like, and vouloir, which I don't think we've seen in any of these examples. Maybe I can think of a little one. Okay, I'll think of an example. So we've got an honorary one here. So 19b, if you like. Nous voulons, we want to, nous voulons, qu'est-ce qu'on veut faire? What do we want to do? Qu'est-ce que l'on veut faire? Nous voulons acheter ça. We want to buy that. We want to buy that. Nous voulons changes to on veut. On veut. Let's go forward a bit messy on the board, sorry about that. Nous voulons becomes on veut. We want to buy that. The verb voulons changes to veut, and nous changes to on. And they're followed by the infinitive verb acheter, and ça just means that, whatever that is. Whatever that is. Okay. Last one, I thought I'd sneak in a little present subjunctive here. Don't worry if you're not sure what these are, but when you have the sentence il faut, or the phrase il faut que, the verb that follows is in the, not the indicative, present indicative, but the present subjunctive, which is several other videos in itself. But here I just want to introduce il faut que, and the fact that this verb changes from the normal one. So instead of il faut que nous partons, we have il faut que nous partions. So partions is the present subjunctive of to go, partir in the new form. Il faut que means it's necessary that, we must, and it's from the verb falloir. Okay, look that up, especially if like you're at uni or you're in France studying. Lucky duckies. Or you know, you're like a higher level learner. It's going to be useful. So il faut que nous partions changes to il faut que. So we've got que plus nous becomes que plus l'on. Il faut que l'on parte. Il faut que l'on parte. En fait, il faut que l'on parte maintenant. Il faut que nous partions. It's the end, guys. I don't think you saw me then. Il faut que nous partions. Let's raise the desk back up without knocking stuff off. Okay, so what we've seen, what I've told you about are, what I've told you about is the fact that on, the personal pronoun, the subject pronoun, sorry, can be used, pronom personnel en français, can be used instead of nous in generally casual situations. However, I found with my students who are working in France that nous is generally replaced with on, even in their workplaces. So it just depends. But if you hear on doit faire du travail instead of nous devons faire du travail, on est en retard instead of nous sommes en retard, I just want you to be aware that on followed by a third person singular conjugation just means we. Okay, we are, we have, we want. It's just a very common format and structure that is used instead of nous sommes, nous avons, nous allons. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn and be familiar with and still hear the new form, okay? So when you're watching stuff on Netflix or listening to songs or interacting with friends, family, colleagues, other people you don't know on social media in French, look out for whether they use on to mean we or whether they're using nous. You might even see a little mixture. Okay, so merci beaucoup, and here's wishing you a very, very good remainder of the week. Bonne semaine et à la prochaine fois. À la prochaine fois, oui. Oui, à la prochaine fois. I wanted to say though, before I go, if you're interested in becoming a member of my French club, just send me an email. All my contact details are under the video description, or in the video description, and I try to reply to comments. So if you have any suggestions for future content, let me know. And I'm sure at some point we'll be looking at the use of on as its impersonal sort of use, rather than on meaning we. Merci beaucoup. Bonne semaine. À la prochaine fois. Merci.